Hey friends, welcome back to Kuriko's Crochet. I'm Kuriko and I crochet, and today I'm going to be teaching you how to start crocheting. And I don't mean like showing you stitches or anything like that. Like, you are sitting on your couch one day watching a video and you're like, I want to learn to crochet. Where do I start? That is what this video is. From you sitting on your couch, where do you go in order to crochet? It is not complicated, but at the same time, it can seem really intimidating. And so I'm going to tell you how to do it in the way that I wish I had. So yeah, let's get into it. My first tip, obviously you need to get materials. Go to Walmart. Don't go to Joann's, don't go to Michael's, don't go to Hobby Lobby, don't go to your local yarn store. Just go to Walmart. Walmart has everything that you need. Walmart has yarn. They have Red Heart Super Saver, which is like a really kind of standard basic acrylic yarn. And they have, I believe, like their Mainstays brand has yarn. So I would highly recommend doing that. There's no need, if you are just barely approaching crochet and you don't even know if it's something that you'll want to do long term, if you're just like, I just want to see how I like this. But if you are looking to learn to crochet and you have nowhere, like you have nothing to start off, I would say go to Walmart and start there. There's no need to break the bank over something that you're just trying. So I would recommend going and buying a cheap yarn. My recommendation would be an acrylic yarn like a Red Heart Super Saver or a Mainstays acrylic, just a category 4 medium yarn. It'll tell you it on the label. If it says for worsted or for medium, that's what you're looking for. You can also, if you want to, do a chunky yarn, but my recommendation would be to start with a bit of a smaller yarn. There tends to be less of a halo around it, and so it just is easier to see your stitches. It's an easier, more approachable yarn just in general. And then you'll need to buy a hook. Walmart also has hooks. They have crochet hooks. Typically the standard that you'll see for like a Red Heart Super Saver or Mainstays, I don't know off the top of my head, but you'll usually see it's a 5mm crochet hook is the recommendation. I would go a little bit bigger as a beginner. I would say do a 5.5 or even a 6 or 6.5mm crochet hook. That way, especially when you're going into your chains, you're a beginner, you don't know how to maintain your tension. And that's something that's learned over time, what your tension is going to be, if you like a tighter tension or looser tension. But it's just a way for you to guarantee, if you go a little bit bigger than the recommended hook size, it's just a way for you to guarantee that you'll be able to see your stitches really well, and be able to put your hook through the loop really well. It just makes it easier. And over time, you know, if you ultimately decide to pursue crochet, like this is this yarn that I'm using, it's recommended a 9mm hook, and I'm using a 7 because I like tighter stitches and I have a little bit of a tighter tension. So that is just my preference. But I would definitely say for a beginner, start with like a $3 skein of yarn, $3 acrylic worsted weight skein of yarn. Start with like a $2 Susan Bates hook. They're going to have very basic metal hooks there. That works perfectly for your first project ever. You don't need to go get any fancy like tulip hooks or clover hooks or any like fancy resin hooks or anything. Just start very basic. And then you can work your way up from there if you decide that you want to pursue crochet more intentionally and more consistently. But that is definitely what I recommend. And then you'll need tapestry needles or darning needles. They're the same thing. It's just sometimes they're called tapestry needles, sometimes they're called darning needles. And believe it or not, Walmart has those too. They're just little needles. They look like sewing needles. They're just typically bigger because they're made to handle bigger thread, aka yarn. So you can find packs of those for like $1. So I would grab one of those, and then if you don't have scissors, or at least like if you don't have scissors that aren't used in the kitchen, get a pair of scissors. If not, if you have like a pair of office scissors, that'll work just fine. And eventually, obviously, you can upgrade to craft scissors. But you don't need to really dive outside of and really into the craft world with your materials in order to learn to crochet. Like, I used a pair of school scissors for my crochet projects literally for years until I got a pair of craft scissors, because that's just what was available. And when you are, trying to save money, when you're trying to budget and also crochet, there are just some things that are gonna go on the wayside, and a pair of craft scissors is one of them. You don't need that to crochet. It's just a luxury to be able to have a pair of scissors specifically dedicated to yarn, and I recognize that. So go to Walmart, buy everything you need: yarn, hook, scissors if you don't have any scissors. And like I said, I would avoid using kitchen shears just because you don't want your yarn to get dirty like that. And you want your kitchen shears to stay your kitchen shears. But scissors and tapestry needles, if they have a 1-pack, do a 1-pack. You don't need to overcomplicate it. My next step would be going to YouTube. Videos when you're beginning to crochet are significantly easier to follow. Don't go online and Google patterns and look at written patterns. You're not going to understand what's going on most of the time. It took me literally 3 years of crocheting before I was comfortable reading written patterns. And so do not be ashamed if you look at a written pattern as a beginner and go, this is a foreign language, because it is. Crochet has its own language and its own like shorthands and stuff that make it really, really hard as an outsider to understand them. And so I would just go to YouTube. There are so many videos, and videos will show you exactly what you need to see in stitches and such, rather than trying to read what's happening and being very confused. And then I would say find a tutorial that works for you. The way that my brain works, and this would always be my recommendation, is to find a super, super beginner friendly project. Like, I can watch the How to Crochet 101 tutorials all day, and I make them, showing you the basic stitches. But if I can't just learn off of swatches. I have to see it practically put into use in a project. And so my recommendation would be looking up like beginner friendly scarf. And I will link below some patterns and videos that I have found that are really beginner friendly and like truly beginner friendly. Like no back loops, no nothing. Just like chains, single, half double, double crochets, like bare bones projects. So that way you can really get a feel for your yarn and like your stitches and really get comfortable with it, while also producing something that you made. Like there is a certain amount of like gratification that comes from completing a project, and you deserve to have that as a beginning crocheter. Just swatching and making swatches, it'll definitely like teach you how to do the stitches. I'm not saying that it won't, but you'll kind of go, okay, but like what next? Like, what was the point of that? And so if you use a project to really like get in there, and like, I mean, it's a practical application of it, right? Like you actually get to use the stitches that you are learning actively in a project. And so I will link some scarf tutorials down below. I think scarves would be by far the most approachable project. I don't think you should start off with a sweater because that involves too many different pieces. That's something that you work up to. I would say avoid a blanket because that's really big, and even as like an experienced crocheter, sometimes if I'm making a blanket, I can get really discouraged and burnt out on it. I would not recommend doing like a beanie, anything that has to be worked in the round, anything that involves increases or decreases to start off. So I would include granny squares in that, and people might disagree, and that's totally fine. But I think you can move into a granny square as like your second project, but understanding some basic stitches and just going back and forth row by row, I think will help you a lot more in the long run into doing things in the round and increasing and decreasing. So I think that a scarf would be the best option. Because beanies are either going to be worked on the round, or you're probably going to have to do increases or decreases, and you'll need to do a lot more sewing, or like seaming together, which as a beginner, not really the most ideal. So that would absolutely be my recommendation, is to follow a scarf tutorial. That's what I'm doing with knitting right now. I know I've like knitted a couple different projects at this point, but I started with, okay, I'm going to make a scarf because this is the most simple construction item I can possibly make for this new medium that I'm taking on. So I would recommend going and looking up scarf, like crochet scarf for beginners. And there are a couple really good ones that are actually for beginners and actually have really incredibly basic stitches that are really cute, and you'll want to wear it, and you'll want to wear it even more because you made it. And so you can go in and make that. And a lot of them are made with worsted weight yarns, very basic acrylic yarns for beginners, because they're made for beginners. Now, I probably will someday make a beginner tutorial on something like that, but that's not my focus right now. So I'll do that someday, and I will absolutely add the link in here. But for now, I'm going to link a playlist of just some of the best beginner scarf tutorials that I can find. And then you can also, like I said before, you can follow a tutorial that basically says how to crochet, and it's like, this is the single crochet, this is the half double crochet, this is the double crochet. If that is the way you learn, go for it. Don't let me stop you. However you learn best, that would be my recommendation. My only like strong recommendation as a beginner would be, because we live in a world where we have video of everything, don't go for a written pattern, because it will be so hard to understand. And a lot of these beginner tutorials where they're doing like a half double crochet chain scarf, they will show you in depth how to do the stitch that they're talking about. They'll say, okay, and this is how you do a slip knot, and this is how you chain, and this is how you try to maintain tension, and then this is how you turn your work, and they go in depth because they recognize that it's for beginners. And so be totally comfortable in those YouTube tutorials that you are fully taken care of. If they're written for beginners, then the person understands that it's for a beginner, and they will write it in a way that is actually helpful to beginners, rather than somebody where they're like, all right, and then you're going to double crochet, and they like speed right through it. And I try to do, when I do tutorials, try to do them really slowly, because I know the first couple videos I watched were really difficult, because they would just do it at their normal pace, and it's like, I'm a beginner, I'm going to be moving slowly. So that would be my recommendation. And then from there, just go into it. I would say if you're going to do a scarf, probably buy 2 skeins, and you can do different colors. I would recommend just one. Find a video on different joining methods for yarn, and see which one you like best, which one you feel would be the easiest or the most secure. Totally up to you, but that would be my recommendation. I hope this has been helpful. If I have any more thoughts on how to start crocheting, I will add them in. But yeah, just going to Walmart, buying cheap materials, finding a very basic pattern to follow that will cover a lot of your bases. And if it works for you, doing swatches, all of that is wonderful. And again, like I said before, this is all just my recommendations. If you feel like there is something else you can do that thing, right? Like, I am not here to gatekeep crochet and say that you have to learn how to crochet in a very specific way. Everybody's crochet journey is their own, and I think that's a wonderful thing. And so I want you to have the most comfortable crochet journey that you can. And so if you think of anything else, ask questions, please. I am happy to answer them. But that is all I have for you today. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you want more crochet content, especially beginner-friendly crochet content, crochet vlogs, crochet project ideas, feel free to subscribe. It's totally free, and I appreciate you being here. Happy crocheting, friends.